Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for sharing your lunch hour with the African American Black Employee Resource Group, affectionately known as AABERG. And welcome to our final session 4 of our 4-part series for Black Voices Matter. Today we have an amazing guest, and we cannot wait to introduce him to you. Please note that we will have a special session from 1 to 1:30 p.m. to have a Q&A with our speaker. However, don't forget to post your questions to the chat, and our committee will keep their eyes out for it. And don't forget to complete the evaluation at the end, and we will make sure we share the link in the chat. I am Cheryl Isabel, Chair of Professional Development for AABERG, covering Wisconsin's Milwaukee Community Engagement Lead and Licensed Health Coverage Navigator with UW-Madison Division of Extension Health and Wellbeing Institute. Just want to provide an overview for all of you on this call today of AABERG.
I felt like I ordered everything.
AABERG's purpose is to serve as a resource for and foster current and future African American colleagues' success by sponsoring programming, providing collegial support, encouraging belonging, and raising a collective voice related to issues that impact employees' ability to thrive personally and professionally. None of this could be possible without the support of our leadership team. And I want to introduce our leadership committee members to you. We have Danielle Hairston Green, who is the chair of AABERG, Rhonda Davis, the co-chair, Quintella Perry, secretary, Catherine Borgschmack, our treasurer, James Bowling and Eva Terry, co-chairs of Membership and Retention Committee, Carla Williams, the chair of our Marketing and Media Committee, and myself, again, Cheryl Isabel, and the chair of Professional Development. On this day in Black history, in 1959, the Arkansas General Assembly passed a bill that banned the residency of free African Americans and mulatto people anywhere within the bounds of Arkansas. This bill required free Black people to leave the state by January 1st, 1860, or face sale into slavery for a period of 1 year. Proceeds from their labor would go to finance their relocation out of the state. At the time, about 700 free Black people lived in Arkansas, less than in any other slave state. In 1846, the statutes of Arkansas had legally defined mulatto as anyone who had one grandparent who was Negro. Free Negroes were categorized as Black in 1850 U.S. Census, so historians have adopted the term free Black to refer to Negroes and mulattoes who were not enslaved. A person's color was especially important to lawmakers in Arkansas, as slavery was based on race. Since there was no scientific or medical way to prove a person with fair skin was white or Black, in any dispute, the courts normally depended on testimony of neighbors to determine color or race. And now I want to give you our today's presenter's bio. Mr. Kurt D. Rose. Kurt D. Rose is a Milwaukee native who relocated to Madison, Wisconsin in 2011 to break into his human resources career. He currently serves as the Employee and Labor Relations Manager for the city of Madison. He began his career in 2010 as a human resources assistant at UW Extension, Cooperative Extension. He went on to serve as HR assistant advanced at UW-Madison College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, HR recruitment manager at UW Extension, continuing education, outreach in e-learning, and then as HR manager for UW Colleges and Extension. When UW Colleges and Extension was dissolved, Kurt transitioned to an associate director of HR role at UW-Madison School of Education. He ended his tenure with UW-Madison as the interim human resources director at the School of Education in 2021. Kurt also serves as the Director of HR Operations at Madison Metropolitan School District before stepping into his current role. Professional development and lifetime learning are important to Mr. Rose. He is proud and active alum of the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. He holds a bachelor's degree in speech with an emphasis in organizational communications and a Master of Science in occupational and environmental safety and health. He also holds graduate certificates in human resources management and professional ergonomics. Kurt also holds 5 professional certifications in human resources. He was highlighted as part of the 2020 class of 40 under 40 in Business Madison Magazine and completed the inaugural Madison cohort of the Leadership Development Program Forward 48. He was recognized by Madison 365 as a 2022 most influential Black leader of Wisconsin, and most recently named the 2023 Young Professional of the Year. Kurt is active in the community. He served as president of the Urban League of Greater Madison Young Professionals from 2019 to 2023, and currently serves as the immediate past president for the chapter. He also serves as the National Urban League Young Professionals Central Region Council of Presidents mentor. He was recognized as a National President of the Month by the National Urban League Young Professionals. In addition to his duties with ULG-MYP, Kurt previously served as a board member of the Madison Ballet and is an active member of the Madison Alumni Chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. To review his full bio, please visit the AABERG SharePoint. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Kurt D. Rose. Take it away, Kurt.
All right, I just had to get my technology together. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to spend the lunch hour speaking with you all about the workplace or weaponizing the identity in the workplace. I am excited to be here. Thank you for the reading of the bio, and thank you for inviting me to speak with you all today. So today I'll be talking about weaponizing identity in the workplace and doing an exploration of strategies to navigate and counteract instances where your identity has been weaponized in the workplace. So a little bit, some ground rules that I want to is that we want to ensure we have a fruitful discussion. So I really like to connect with participants that are on the Zoom. I know it's a little bit more difficult than when we're in person, but some ways that we can do that is by using the chat to correspond with one another. So if there's something that resonates that we're talking about, use the chat to discuss as you're listening. There is nothing wrong with that, to get the chat going and having some discussion there with one another. Grab a pen and paper or a space to jot down any notes along the way. So there are going to be some times where I ask you to do some thinking exercises and do some reflections, and you'll want to have a canvas to utilize to be able to go through those pieces. Most importantly is to make sure you keep your mic muted. We want to make sure that everyone can hear what we're discussing and grasp all the information here. So if you have questions along the way, I'll ask you to use the raise hand button or those things if you need to. All right. All right, so a little bit about me. You heard a lot about me from my bio, but I do like to reiterate that I am an HR professional, but I specialize and pretty much known for my employee relations work and my work in conflict resolution. And so this was an exciting opportunity for me to talk with you all because, as you all know, when looking at conflict resolution and looking at employee relations, our identities play a huge piece in how we show up in those conversations. I have a unique connection to UW Extension, as you heard in my bio. So I'm a previous multicultural awareness program facilitator. I recognize that that program isn't around anymore. But what we did was there were peers that would go out to educate other peers on equity, diversity, and inclusion. We had shared language, we had shared information. It was a 2-day workshop that we would do and manage that. And so it gave us an opportunity to talk to one another in appreciating our differences and working through difficult situations where we could recognize our differences and appreciate them and understand how they play into how we're interacting. So I thought that was important to share with you all because I have a really good understanding of the work that you do in Extension. I know we have some individuals that may be on the call that are not from Extension, but considering that this is hosted by Extension and Extension has a unique setup, I do want to make sure that we touch on that as we're walking through these things and talking through these things. For those of you on the call that are not familiar with Extension, Extension is agents that are working on behalf of UW out in our communities, and they're doing work that is community driven and community based and partner with different counties across the state. And so a lot of their work is spent in the office, but the majority of the work for our educators and our folks that are out in the field is out in the field and out in the community. So there's an added layer of just workplace norms when you're dealing with the community in itself, as well as the politics within the office. And then for those that work in multiple counties, each county has its own personality. So there are different things that you have to deal with in that capacity. So we'll touch on a little bit of that as we talk today. All right, so a roadmap for today. We will start off with the opening discussion and really get our brains rolling and thinking about the things we're talking about today. We'll level set and recognize our identities. And then we'll talk through what does weaponizing identities look like in the workplace? Like, how can you see that? What does that look like? Strategies to navigate when your own identity has been weaponized and what you could do in those instances, and then strategies to counteract when the identity has been weaponized. So there's two ways to look at this. You want to look at how you navigate this, and then you also want to look at how you counteract what has been put out there into the universe about you and your identity. So to get us started, I want us to all think about our own identities. We want to recognize our identities. So I like for you to take a little bit of time to jot down a list of all the identities that are important to you. Think about all that you subscribe to or that you recognize as important pieces of your identity. As an example, I've taken the time to do a little bit for myself. So my identities are I am Black. And so I do identify as Black. I am Black. And so I think that's a very important part of my identity when I show up in the workplace. I am a man. And it's important to recognize that gender dynamics play roles in our workplaces. I am a millennial. And so understanding that age and generations play a role in the way that we interact in the workplace. And I put in here that I am a community leader. Some might think like, how does that interact with the work that you do? Well, it interacts with the work that I do because I am actively working in the community outside of work. And some of the things that I work on may or may not determine how my colleagues receive me, and they may or may not determine how my the other employees that I'm working with, the community that I'm working with, how all of those folks receive me can be identified based on all of those things. So as you are in your spaces, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to just jot down your identities. It's important that you are writing your identities down so that as we continue to talk through this conversation, while I want to focus on our on the identity of Black, I do also want those who may not share that identity to have a space that they can utilize looking at their identities in the way that we're talking about this. And so I'm just going to pause, give us a second, and I would ask for some volunteers that would feel comfortable sharing their list of identities, just a few. All right. Do we have any volunteers? If you can use the raise hand feature, if you'd like to share, I need about 2 or 3 volunteers just to talk about their list of identities. And I cannot see the chat from here. Maybe some have dropped it in there. Oh, all right. Rodney.
What's up, Kurt? So
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you. I put it in chat, but the top 4 identities that came to mind for me were being a Black man who's a husband as well as a stepfather.
Got it. And how do those identities show up when you come to work, Rodney?
I think about this a lot, but for me, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about my Black identity and how that can be perceived by others, especially in a largely white dominated space. So
Hmm.
I feel like I need to move a little bit more carefully so that I am not, I don't know, threatening to others.
Hmm.
Similarly as a man, but flip that around. I don't think about that as much, but I can also use that as a protector, especially when it comes to being a husband and a stepfather.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you for that, Rodney. Caroline, I think it's Caroline. I don't want to mispronounce your name.
Yeah, no, you did it perfectly. Thank you.
Okay.
Um,
Hmm.
I love this question, and I um I love the word too that I tend to gravitate to is Chicana, and
Okay.
so community-driven Chicana is probably what I would say, and Chicana in its essence is someone who is heritage-wise Mexican but born in the United States, and then with the A, it is genderized to say female. And then it also insinuates that because I was born here, um, I have a lineage of immigrants. So I'm the daughter of 2 immigrant parents. And so all in
Hmm.
one word, Chicana encompasses that. And then I'm
Hmm.
community driven.
Okay. So, Caroline, when you think about Chicana and when you show up to work, how does that show up in your workspace?
Yeah, I think it shows up in my workspace um, as someone who is trying to consistently bring my community's voice to every table that I sit at. And so
Hmm.
at minimum, it sets that intention.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Maldonado. Yeah, Mr. Maldonado. Joe, how about you?
Yes, sir. So I put it in the chat too, but and none of these are in order of operation, but youth worker. I put that because, even though I don't directly work with young people anymore, it's always going to be a part of me. It's always going to be exciting to me, and it's always going to be something that's important. Community organizer. Never necessarily took that identity or that title until more recently, but I just know it's like a part of how I move. I connect people, and I always think about who are the right people that need to be in the room in order to make change. Man, Boricua, so of Puerto Rican descent, but raised in the States, particularly Milwaukee, 414 for life. But a Madison resident, Madison Fitchburg area resident, and father.
Okay. And how do those identities play for you in the workplace?
I bring me wherever I go. I don't ever like leave stuff out.
Okay.
Used to code switch, but it's not. I don't feel like it serves me or it serves people I'm in contact with. I gotta be authentic, and I try to push others to be authentic whenever they're around me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you all for participating. That helps a lot. Thank you. So as you're thinking about your identities, I found this quote while I was scrolling on social media. I'm going to be 100% honest with you all. I was scrolling on social media and I was like, man, this would be really good for my talk with AABERG next week. And so I stashed it on social media. I think it is so someone posted it. It looks like it came from a place called Lessons Taught by Life. It's not my quote, and I'm not very familiar with Lessons Taught by Life. but I thought it was a powerful quote. And so I wanted to bring it to this space. So I'm going to read the quote and then we're going to have some reflection here. I'm not intimidating. You're intimidated. There's a difference. I'm not mean nor aggressive. I am honest and assertive, and that makes you uncomfortable. And it's not me that makes you uncomfortable. My presence challenges your comfort. I will not be less for you to feel better about yourself. Okay? So I will not be less for you to feel better about yourself. When I saw this statement, I thought it would be a great way to open our discussion and conversation around this topic here, because this statement evoked so many feelings for me personally. So I would like you all to do a little reflection and just think about what your immediate reaction is to this statement. And when you think about what your immediate reaction is, what previous experiences that you've had have fueled this reaction? Because typically you're feeling this way for a reason. There is some history, there is some feeling there that goes with why you're feeling this. Something has happened in your past, things have gone along. So try to think about what previous experiences fuel this reaction. And then finally, I guess I'd ask, do you subscribe to this statement? Is this something that you say, hey, I like this, I could wear this, I could live this? Or are you like, this is crazy, there's no way that you could actually live this way, this doesn't make any sense, this is not it? So I guess as you all are taking a look, read through, reflect a little bit, I'm going to ask for volunteers again to share their reflections to any of these questions. Not all three, you don't have to do all three, but if you have a reflection on any of these questions, I'd ask for you to use the raise hand feature and respond there. Okay, check the chat. Okay. Oh, I'm going back, sorry. All right, Monica.
Yeah, thanks for sharing this. I am convinced that there are people in my life who are there to show me a mirror of who I really am and how I interact with the world. And so this really resonates a lot with me about what makes me uncomfortable and who the people are that intimidate me and like why they feel intimidating to me. And I can almost always trace it back to something in myself. It's 99% of the time it is not that other person. So I really appreciate how this crystallizes those things.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Monica. Mai.
Hi, Kurt. One of the things that I had to like unpack was like the centering of this message that was on yourself or oneself. I think oftentimes, particularly on how your intersectionality is and where you are within kind of like that privilege pyramid, you find yourself accommodating others for their comforts before you put your comforts first. So I really took this message and I was reading and I just thought, oftentimes that centering of oneself is not promoted, and oftentimes it becomes really secondary, if not even within the top three, but it's putting the comforts of others, particularly those that are very privileged, first. So that's really where I saw that message.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Leo.
Hi. Excuse me. This, I don't know, it brings up a lot of uh like the precarity of asking for what you need to feel safe in a space,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes you're present and then it's like everyone kind of freezes and doesn't really know how to deal with it. I'm a trans man, and down in Florida, I would get misgendered at my jobs all the time. And obviously, like from customers, I'd be like, well, I can't really do much about that, and that would put me in a difficult position if it went wrong. But like with my coworkers, I've tried at some points to like, ask them to gender me correctly. And when pulling someone aside and trying to speak in the most like unintimidating way, trying to be like very, very um pleasing to the other person, and they like start crying and being like, I don't want to, like, there's a certain fragility that I feel like I'm walking on eggshells in order to accommodate other people when I'm asking for literally what makes me feel safe in a space. So
Mm-hmm.
there's that very like what your presence means and how you kind of curate your presence of, will I ask for something? Will I ask for what I need to even be in that space long term without feeling lots of anxiety about, how that could go wrong?
Okay. Thank you, Leo. Christina.
I not I really feel like the quote, and I just really feel what Leo was saying too. When we're talking about being in public and who has like the power in whatever dynamic that you have going, like I completely feel intimidated when people attack some part of my identity and treat me in a certain way because you know, for me predominantly it's because I'm overweight and then I get treated a certain way in public, or people say things and that they would that they feel is okay for them to say to me, you know, and there's really nothing, like I don't have the power to like, not have them be saying that stuff in public. I
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could live like that quote and not be intimidated and feel like I could be myself
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and have
Thank you for that,
safety in being
Christina.
myself. Yeah, too.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So, I chose this quote because it resonated with me personally. When preparing for this talk and thinking about how identities are weaponized in the workforce, this quote speaks directly to my identity as a Black man, more distinctly, a Black man in the workplace. Okay. So my really immediate reaction to this was like somebody wrote how I felt for a very long time, and didn't have the words to be able to describe it. So when I look at this, I see this as a response to my identity being weaponized. So I'm going to break it down from my identity and talk a little bit about that and what previous experiences have fueled this reaction, and then if I subscribe to this statement. So when it says, I'm not intimidating, you're intimidated. I'm not mean or aggressive. I am honest and assertive, and that makes you uncomfortable. Oftentimes, um, people are characterized, especially people who identify as Black or that are Black people, are characterized as intimidating to others. They are characterized as aggressive to others, when in actuality, a lot of times there's just honest conversation and matter of fact discussions and the ability to assert those beliefs without being swayed or without, I like to use the term, going around and around the bush. They just go, being direct, and can be uh, said that, well, you might meet someone who does the same thing, but if they're not Black, they're not necessarily called intimidating. They're not necessarily called mean or aggressive. It may be described in a different way. But because of the stereotypes that are associated with Black people, it is quite frequent that in the workplace, people will automatically go to this space when it looks like you are uncomfortable. Some of these folks are uncomfortable. It is not the employee that makes you uncomfortable, or me, myself. It is that my presence challenges your comfort. So in most of these spaces, they're majority white, and we know that communication is rooted in culture, in how you are raised, how we communicate is taught to us, and that is a cultural piece of how we interact with one another as human beings. And so ultimately, if you're in a place where the culture has been the same for the whole time, and someone comes in and communicates differently than what you may be used to, it is challenging your comfort. The presence of this new communication style is challenging your comfort. And I will not be less for you to feel better about yourself. And that piece resonates with me because for so long in my career and in my work time, I showed up as less than my full Kurt because I thought that it would not be accepted in these spaces. I would not be able to navigate these spaces and be in a space to promote or to be accepted by my colleagues if I did not show up as my full self. And so this is actually, I don't always show up as my full self. I can't say that 100% of the time that I do. And that's fine. But I can say that it is something to aspire to say, I am not going to be less just for you to feel better about yourself. And so some of my previous experiences that fuel this reaction are just things that have happened in the workplace where my genuine direction has been mischaracterized. It has been placed in a place of, power or domination or whatever the case may be, either by my gender or by my race, or even by my age at times when working with individuals from other age places. And so do I subscribe to the statement? Absolutely. It's one that really stuck out to me, and I thought it would give us a good opportunity to look at an example of how someone may feel when their actual identities are being weaponized against them. Okay. And it's also important to recognize that we have multiple identities. When we went through the identity exercise, you heard everyone list off at least 4, and they probably could have listed more. There is no one way to feel. The way that I feel as a Black millennial man may have some similarities to how a Black Gen X woman may feel, but it's going to be very different than because there's going to be aspects that I can't relate to. We don't get to throw away any of our identities when we show up. All of our identities are a part of us. And so ultimately, there is not one identity that you can say, this is that. The one identity that you wear and that you always wear, or a few identities that you wear or that you always wear, are typically your race, one, and then your perceived gender by how you show up. Those are typically worn publicly, and you can't erase those. And so ultimately, the way that things happen in the workplace and people begin to make assumptions or do things can be weaponizing in that way. So we're going to get a little bit into that. So what does weaponizing identities in the workplace look like? So some examples that I thought of to talk with you about that I see quite frequently. So in my work that I do with conflict resolution, employee relations over the years, I've seen a number of things that have come into place where weaponizing identities, how it looks. So you have your typical gaslighting, where someone has done something and they'll play like they haven't done it, or they will send it forward like it's not a thing, and they'll gaslight the next person and say, oh no, I had no idea that was taking place, or oh no, this was that, or that piece. I've seen that happen a lot in weaponizing identities in the workplace. it's generally rooted in assumptions. And so in a number of things that I've seen, assumptions lead the way when weaponizing identities in the workplace. So for an example of an assumption, you can see that I have a Black woman that is on my staff. She comes in, she's timely, she's here, and she is late one day, or she comes in late a couple days in 1 week, and then colleagues are talking like, well, what is she late for? Well, I heard that, she had to drop her kids off. Now everyone on the team that our parents or identify as parents will have opportunities where I may have to be late because I have to do something for my child, right? But a lot of what I've seen when it comes to Black women in the workplace are assumptions that, well, she's a single mom, she has to make these changes, and we know this is the case, and now she's late, and can we depend on her? Are we able to put her on that project? Can we do these things because she's been late these last couple of weeks because she has those things going on, and I don't know if she has the support she needs at home. Those are some of the things that have come up in discussions and conversations, and that is weaponizing the identity of the individual. That's an assumption. You don't know unless she has shared the information with you that she's a single parent. A lot of times those things have come out in that space. And it's typically an assumption made off of a stereotype of that particular identity that stands there. There are exaggerations based on known stereotypes. So in the example that I showed you where it says, I'm not mean or aggressive, I am just direct and to the point. A lot of complaints that I've received are people feeling intimidated because they feel like someone has been mean or aggressive because they said something very clearly about what they needed or what they wanted to do in the workplace. And those exaggerations typically come based off of a known stereotype of someone being a person of color, or someone being a woman who typically wouldn't speak directly. So that's it's a known stereotype that if you're speaking directly, that is combative, or those types of identities have been weaponized in that way. Dress code and appearance expectations. I've worked in many offices where there is a relaxed dress code. And so what's relaxed to one person or the majority of the office, depending on where it was, they may say, oh, I can wear a t-shirt, a pair of shorts, and some nice running shoes, and I still look professional at work. Yet there may be a colleague who's a little younger, a little bit more stylish, who comes a little bit more casual, but it may be a t-shirt and maybe some denim shorts that might have a little fringe on the end of them, and instead of your regular running shoe, it may be a Jordan or a sneaker, a basketball shoe. And so then that is a part of my identity. This is a part of my culture. This is how I dress. We have a casual workplace, but why is it that basketball shoes are not appropriate, or why is it that the denim shorts with a small fray are not appropriate, but we're okay with a running shoe or a fishing shoe? Those are the type of ways that you weaponize. And then microaggressions that build a narrative. So we all know about microaggressions and as they take place in the workplace. And as those microaggressions continue to happen, then narratives are built about employees. And so using the example of the employee being late and then saying that they don't want to put them on a project because they have a history of being late, it's excused by their supervisor. You don't know anything about it, but sometimes a lot of those things happen not by your direct supervisors, but by your peers and your colleagues that then start to weaponize your identities and build this reputation of an employee without any facts or a real issue or real information there to stand on. So we talk about what are strategies that we can use to navigate when my identity has been weaponized. You want to document when instances arise. It's always important that you are keeping proper documentation when these types of things are happening. If you ever want to address this, or you want to go to a point where you need to counteract what's happening, you want to make sure that you have the details and the information to be able to tell your story, give examples, have the information present. Documenting I know the HR person is telling you to document. You're like, of course he would say that. But here's why. When you have a timeline and a log of what's happening and what has taken place, when it is time for you to explain to someone, hey, this is inappropriate, you have the notes and the ability to draw back to that. That is the whole purpose of documenting along the way, so that when you are ready to address it, you have that ability. You want to deal in facts, not feelings. So you always want to remember the facts. It is very important that you stay on the facts, because yes, the feelings of that you have once someone has weaponized your identity are intense, 100%. But you have to remain in the facts to be able to show and prove how this is inappropriate and how you have drawn the line that this is my identity being weaponized. You are switching this to be about my identity, and not, there's no real true reason why, if anyone else would have done this wouldn't be the case. And so you want to remember those facts to be able to sell your point and prepare for that. You want to reflect and do a deep dive. I'll be the first to tell you that within our identities, we live in our identities and we have the ability to be connected to our identities. But sometimes we're so connected to our identities that we don't understand when a decision has been, or something has been said that is not necessarily weaponizing your identity, is actually sharing the truth of what's actually happening. And so it's important that if you feel like your identity is being weaponized, that you do a deep dive. You look at what's actually happening here. What are the things around this, and how is this coming to me, and why? You want to find an outlet. And so you want to identify support that is outside of work. Finding an outlet inside of work is not appropriate, because it's just going to exacerbate what is happening. It's going to change the whole narrative, the gossip goes, all of those things happen. Find an outlet outside of work, whether it's through EAP, or if it's friends and family, if it is some type of activity to do to get your mind off of it. You have to find a way to be able to recognize this is happening. I have to get to a space where I can get the support that I need so that I can counteract this stuff later along the way. And then you want to maintain composure. The main thing here is maintaining composure and remembering the facts and not feelings. So understanding that, yes, you have those feelings. Yes, that's where it is. But in order to push this forward, counteract it, address it, we'll want to maintain composure to have a peaceful discussion, because we know that if we're riled up, if we have our emotions tied in, those discussions are very difficult to continue. And then we have strategies to counteract when an identity has been weaponized. So once you're navigating this, you're like, we've got all those strategies that we just went through, so a good key function. But then you talk about counteracting when it's happened. So now it's out there, and how do you counteract that? You want to address your issues with facts and receipts. You want to say, hey, this is untrue. I'm not hostile. I'm not X, Y, and Z. Here are the facts. Here's what I did. Here's how I did this. And I would like to understand where that aligns with being hostile, where that aligns with being aggressive. Want to utilize your work rules, your code of conduct, your handbook, any reporting mechanisms that you have in the organization. So you want to look at what those work rules look like. What is the code of conduct there? Does any of this align with that, for you to be able to say, hey, our code of conduct says X, Y, and Z. What you're saying doesn't align with that. Or our handbook says X, Y, and Z, and from where I'm sitting, this doesn't align with our handbook. And so really being up to speed with those things. You want to document your discussions regarding the topics. So after you've addressed the topic and you've talked about it and you've addressed the issue with someone and you all have come to a consensus, you want to get that documented, get that in writing in some way, shape, or form, so that you can point back to it if this continues to happen. And then ask clarifying questions. Sometimes we may feel like we're being weaponized, or sometimes people may feel how they feel, but you want to ask the clarifying questions to get them to get to a point where they understand why they're feeling the way they're feeling. Ask those questions about that. And then follow the directions given until the situation is resolved. So if you are getting feedback like, hey, I need you to do, let's say you got the feedback that you're too aggressive in X, Y, and Z, and the feedback is, I'd like for you to work with this employee in this way. It is in our best interest when our identity is being weaponized. We're already out here with this narrative being pushed forward and being weaponized against us. So it's in our best interest to follow whatever directions they're asking. If they're saying, that you are communicating disrespectfully or whatever the case may be, ask those clarifying questions of how they would prefer communication, and then ensure that you're doing that communication in that way, so that you don't dig a deeper hole while you're still trying to address the issue. So you want to make sure that if the issue was with the dress code, like, hey, you had on the denim shorts with the fray, that's unnecessary. If you're working through that with a third party or HR office or whatever the case may be, don't wear the denim shorts again until you have it cleared and say, I don't understand why I can't wear the denim shorts with the fray. Here's, it doesn't say anything in the dress code about this. It doesn't say X, Y, and Z. This is, I think this was a part of my identity, X, Y, and Z. And then you have the ability to stand on something and address that, because I'm following your directions. I'm not being insubordinate, but I'm also saying that this is not appropriate. And you can go back to wearing your shorts after it's resolved, if that makes any sense. I'm just trying to be mindful of time. We're at 12:46, so my apologies. And I think I'm right towards the end here to open our Q&A section. And I'm going to stop screen sharing so I can see you all. But yes, here we are.
Yes, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask Kurt the questions while we have him, or you can put it in the chat and we'll address those as well.
All right, any questions? I don't see any in the chat either. I'm catching up in there. It's hard for me to read the chat when I'm trying to present. Oh, Kim, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Kurt, for this phenomenal presentation. A question that I'm wondering if you could share your insights and perspectives on is, for reporting mechanisms and things that our division has set up, what are ways that we can ensure trust and help people feel safe to share what they're experiencing so that it can be documented and addressed? Thank you.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Kim. I think trust comes with proof that things are being addressed, right? And when we're talking about our identities. These are things that are very personal to us, and who we are as people, how we show up. And so if you want to build trust with your colleagues around the process, I think one piece is providing transparency. This is our process. This is what it looks like. This is how it goes. This is how confidential it is. This is how confidential it isn't. Here's the channels that it will go through in order to resolve your issue, right? I think the very first thing is the transparency piece. If colleagues and employees understand that transparency, they have the ability to recognize that this is something I want to go down the road with, or is it something I don't want to get involved with, right? For my own regular safety as an employee. I think the second piece of this is ensuring that once those things are coming through that reporting mechanism, that they are being addressed timely and appropriately. The timely piece is very, very important, because letting things fester for longer just creates bigger issues. And if someone knows that they've put in something and they don't know where it is in the process or where they're going with it, it can cause other issues amongst the team and amongst everyone else. I would also say that making sure that it is addressed after the fact, and that there's some communication that goes back to the person that reported it of, hey, we've looked into this, we've identified and made changes. Thank you for letting us know, some kind of resolve. I think those are the key elements there. And then lastly, it would be, drawing it back to whatever the reason that is there for. So like if there's a zero tolerance for whatever the case may be, always keeping that consistent across spaces. I think a lot of times where there's trust loss is that, yeah, we might do this in family living, but in 4-H, we don't care about that as much. And so while if it's not a universal thing, it can be very difficult, especially with all of these people being in the same county offices, and this area doesn't care about it as much as this area. And so having consistency across is very important because where everyone is still colleagues.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Carrie?
Sorry, I couldn't get unmuted there. Good to see you, Kurt. I've had a couple incidents or in the last year or so where an employee has come to me, they share something that has happened, but they don't want to report it officially. But they need someone to hear it. And I've done that. And in both situations, I felt like that really wasn't enough either. I mean, I want to be respectful to the employee and I don't want to overstep in my role. But when I know something's happened and I don't have all the details, I only have the one employee, but where I do feel like that directly had to do with their identity. And then to just sit there. I mean, I know being heard is important, but I feel like I want to be able to do more than that. And putting it back on that person to fix it doesn't feel like the right thing to do, but I'm not sure what is.
I think that's a great question, Carrie. And I think that's situational, right? Like, depends on what that employee has shared with you. If the employee has shared something with you based on their uncomfortability and they just wanted to vent, we have to be careful not to jump into hero syndrome. A lot of times, trauma that comes with our identities opens up more trauma than people will recognize, because that is you, and you've dealt with that trauma that's there for a reason. And so my mechanism for fixing it, whatever happened, may be just to be heard, and that's enough for me, right? I may not want to go through filing a report and being scrutinized and having to answer questions and going through an investigation, and that just may not be what I need for my wellness at that time. And so you have to be okay with that. Some strategies that I would give you with those employees is to say, I'm open for you to vent. Let me know how else I can support you. Is there anything else that you would need from this conversation? How can I support you in this? How can I help you with this, right? And you allow them to tell you, hey, I want to go further, or no, I don't, I'm good, this was great, thank you, Carrie. Or if you could talk to the other supervisor of this team so that they know what's going on. That's how I would recommend, especially when we're talking about identities, as long as it's within whatever you all's policies and work rules are. If you're a mandated reporter for something, of course you got to report it, right? But if it's something that doesn't fall in that line, I think it's important to maintain that trust with that employee. They felt some type of trust with you, that you don't overstep that boundary and then go to try to fix something, especially if the identity is not yours, right? So if that identity is not one that you share, you really don't want to do that, because then it's like, who asked you to do that, right? Like, why would you? And that could be a much different effect than what you were intending to do.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Kurt, there is one comment in the Q&A or the chat session that I did want to bring up. If you could just answer this, but the comment is, can you share your experience as a young professional working in a space that isn't necessarily representative and navigating spaces where you're trying to position yourself as a professional and not just a Black male feeling a quota?
Ooh, that's a loaded question right there. Of course, I can share that. I think it has been a difficult journey for me as a young professional in Madison, in government or education positions with the authority of HR, right? Like I have to say all of those layers in order to really answer that question. Um, the space is becoming more representative of my age range because I'm slowly moving out of being a young professional and closer to not being one anymore than I am to being one. But I do know that it has been quite difficult. Some of the difficulties that I've come across are scheduling, people feeling like, well, you're young, you just get the 2 hours. That's how it goes. We've been around here. You work whatever shifts people don't want to work. You cover things that people don't want to cover. And of course, naturally, there's some of that. But I think it is extremely prevalent in the government industry and state workers and the university where seniority holds is a big piece. So young professionals don't feel it's safe to comfort to perform. And I would say as a Black male in these spaces, it's even more intense because I'm in HR, and we know that in predominantly white spaces, a lot of times men in itself, or not even predominantly white spaces, in predominant in HR spaces, men are very rare. There's a lot of women in HR spaces, and the culture is very female dominated in HR. You throw in the fact that I am a male, there's I have experience from previous colleagues before this notion or something. I'm not a hard worker because I'm a guy, and I'm going to want all the women to do all of the work. And then it's also difficult to navigate the piece of being a Black male to add on to that in these white spaces because I have a different understanding of things that are happening. I'm trying to digest that. And so it I could do a whole talk on that, Danielle, to go there, but I can say that my experience has been affected by those identities. And what I do to try to navigate that is just show up and perform at the level that I've always performed at, be dependable, but also draw boundaries when I can and how I need to.
So, Kurt, before we go on to Maya's question, I saw she had her hand raised. There's a little issue we're having with your mic there. Wondering if we can, okay. Okay, thank you. Thanks everyone for your patience. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, sometimes if you take the earpiece out, it kind of helps.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's perfect.
That's what I was
perfect.
trying. My computer had got frozen. I tried to take the earpiece out and yeah, whatever. But yeah, I'm here.
No worries. Maya, if you're still on with us, you can come off the mic and ask your question.
Sure. Thank you so much. I'm Mia. I work in Appleton as a community development educator. It's good to have you, Kurt. Thanks so much. I just wanted to ask you about proactive strategies because we're talking about case-by-case basis here. Are there any specific tools you would recommend? I know your excellent courses are not available anymore for extension folks, but like anything that you think our offices or our general organization should be tapping into to make us more competent.
Yes. I think part of it is just managing the narratives of your offices and your areas. So I think a piece of this is the piece where I said deal in facts and not feelings is one that I like to use a lot in team dynamics and communications dynamics of really getting past, like, we'll be in conversation and people say, getting your team, I guess, trained to be in conversations and speak of fact and not feeling. And it's a little bit of a difficult thing to do, but once you can get a team to start doing that, it's less room for people to make assumptions across the board, right? So if everyone is speaking in facts and saying, like, the report is, I know the report is late. It was due on the 3rd. I had to do X, Y, and Z to get the information I needed to get it to you today. X, Y, and Z versus I'm so sorry the report is late. I feel so bad that I didn't do this X, Y, and Z. Or someone else said, I feel like they did this on purpose. They put all this other work ahead of it. And like when you hear that narrative or those pieces, just re-grounding and removing your team to speak in facts. Like, the fact is the report is late. The question is, what are we going to do now? And we move the conversation in that way. It's not dehumanizing it, because we are humans, we have feelings, but it's making sure that we don't live in the feelings to make decisions, and that we make the decisions or make a determination on facts of, is this really happening this way, or am I just feeling stressed out and so now I feel like it's happening this way? Does that help? That's one proactive thing that I would add.
Thank you. Yes.
So now we've gone past the 1 o'clock hour, but I want to take the time to thank everyone that has joined us for this last presentation in our professional development series. And thank you for being with us, and thank you, Kurt. Please don't forget to do our evaluation. You can find that in the chat. If you will just take the time to fill that out, the AABERG committee would greatly appreciate that. And thank you, Mr. Rose, for spending this amazing hour with us. On behalf of the AABERG and our colleagues, friends, and partners of the Division of Extension, we hope we can call upon you to continue to engage us in meaningful dialogue. And remember, 3 pearls that I would like to share with you is, I am not going to be less to make you feel better. The other pearl that I have is related to identity, and that's all of our identities are part of us. And I think that's something we need to remember and reflect upon. And as a reminder, Kurt Rose's full bio and a recording of today's session can be found only on our SharePoint site. We hope that you have enjoyed yourself and return for our Juneteenth celebration, Wednesday, June 19th. Thank you to everyone who has joined us in this live discussion today, and for those who will be watching the recording. Now, we're going to just hang on just for a little bit, all of those that can hang on, for some additional Q&A with Mr. Rose to answer any of those questions that you may have had.